What car is that one?
A Volkswagen. A Subaru!
A Subaru!
Yeah!
What do you like about Subarus?
So much about it.
What's the best car?
Subaru!
What is up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Uberkooledgarage. On this week's episode, we are going to be hopping into the bug. A lot of very interesting things are coming along on the bug. It's turning out really, really well. I'm extremely excited about it to show you guys the progress. It's one of those things that it's been kind of difficult to wrap my brain around, trying to figure out what's going to look best, how it's going to function, make sure that everything kind of works all together as one unison thing. So as soon as this stuff is done, then we can kind of tear the car further apart, start getting the chassis stuff finished and all of that. So I want to finish off these couple little bits. That way I can work on them in the future and kind of finish them off, get them all painted and everything like that. That way I don't have to wait on it later on. But let's go ahead and hop into the rear fender flare part 2 video. And got a couple other little bits and pieces here that you guys might enjoy as well. So hope you guys enjoy the video. Well, it's update time, so you can see that I got the majority of the over fender kind of skeleton done. Ends up tapering, and then it tapers bigger as it goes across. I'm still not 100% sure on what I'm going to do with this backside yet, but you guys haven't seen the fenders either. So passenger side fender is basically done. All the bodywork's done. You can see here that I added this section in. I didn't want the over fender to come all the way down to the bottom of the fender. So I went ahead and added in a piece of metal here. Still have to sand that down and paint it. But that ended up turning out a lot better. So the fender's actually really, really straight. Went ahead and painted it in gloss black paint. That way, when I go to make the fiberglass ones, this will give a better surface for the mold release stuff. That way it doesn't stick to it. Also went ahead and welded in a flange all the way through here. Bodyworked that. I got one little whoop right here, but I'll fine sand that out and then recoat it. So this flange made the fender look a whole heck of a lot better. So I'll end up making like a carbon panel that will fill this section in. But that turned out super good. So now I just have to figure out what I'm going to do here on this bottom section. And I think I'm going to do something a little bit different than what I did with the front one when I did it. I ended up using a ton of Bondo to get the front one where it needed to be. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm probably going to use foil tape, and I will foil tape all the way across each individual one. That way I can just kind of give it a more solid base. And then I'll still run the fleece over top of that, coat that in resin, and then Bondo and smooth out what I have there. I think with the front fender, what happened was as soon as I got the fabric on there and started coating that in resin, it started to sink in each individual one. I've been trying to figure out a way to do it. I almost thought about using some chicken wire and just running chicken wire underneath the whole thing. But I think the tape might work out really good because the fleece and the resin won't stick to the actual foil tape, but it'll give it, that solid piece. So if later on in the future I want to modify this skeleton and make molds for smaller fenders, I can do so. I'll just pull the fleece off, cut these down, and then suck that whole thing in, and I can make different sizes from that. So I think that's probably what I'm going to do. I'm going to start foil taping this section here, probably get to like this point here, and then try and figure out what I'm going to do for the rear. I have a couple ideas, but I just don't want it to look funky or out of place. So, and with the foil on there, I'll be able to see how the fender is actually going to look. I am still waiting on fiberglass to get here. I ordered an entire roll of fiberglass. So as soon as that gets here, we can pop this off. I'll make the fender. And actually, I'm probably going to cut the fender even more and just fiberglass what I need. That way I don't waste a bunch of fiberglass and resin and all that stuff. So I'll probably end up cutting the fender back and then leaving probably an inch and a half along behind underneath the over fender. So I'll end up going through and marking all of that as I'm doing this, and then we'll cut it out and make some fiberglass fenders. Well, there's the shape. You guys saw me hot gluing the outside perimeter. And then I also hot glued a couple of these ribs in here. Actually, all of the ribs. That way it keeps that contour. Actually turned out really good. I actually really like the way that it looks. I was nervous there for a while that it wasn't going to look as good as I thought it was going to originally, but with this car being as wide as it is, this is very functional. So, went ahead, hot glued all the way around on the inside lip, pulled and stretched and got everything all nice and smooth. This does look like it's going to be minimal body work. I did end up finishing the rear. So you can see it comes flat out here, and then it kind of dips underneath. And then it's got a nice radius there. There's probably roughly my trim line on this fender. Give it a little bit more room in between the tire and the actual fender. But it turned out really, really nice. It does look weird with the tire on there, because the tire actually bubbles out past this, but I have 0 camber in it right now, and the way that the fender, when I fiberglass, it'll actually sit on the outside of this, so the mold is going to be larger than this a little tiny bit, so the tire should tuck directly up in there. I am planning on lowering the car probably a half an inch or so. So that'll actually tuck the tire further back up in there as well. So it actually turned out really good. Update time. So you saw me get the outer skin done, got that all glued in, and then poured resin over the whole thing, got that all soaked and saturated, and then I went ahead and laid the first coat of Bondo, and I was kind of hopeful when I put the tape over the whole thing that would kind of keep that arch in it. Well, when I saturated my very first over fender, it sagged a lot, and it took a ton of Bondo to kind of build back up where it needed to be. So I was hoping the tape would help keep that form. Unfortunately, it still sagged quite a bit. So I got the first layer of Bondo on there. It seemed like it was going to take way too much Bondo again to build up that process. Down here wasn't too bad, so I went ahead and sanded all of that. That's all basically smooth. Painted it black just to see the lines and everything in it. So I still have like a couple touch-up spots here and there to hit. I did the same with the outside. Everything on the outside here looks pretty good. I'm probably going to wet sand the black again and then coat it again. I'll probably do the same down here, but I'll patch the stuff that I need to patch. So Bondo is expensive. It's, $20, $25 for a small can of it. I got one of the large cans, one of these large cans from Walmart, and it was actually on sale, but that was a long time ago. I think I spent $40 on that, $50 on that, something like that. But that's still super expensive. So I remember watching Built Official, did a whole bunch of over fenders and stuff on cars. If you haven't checked him out on YouTube, you should go check him out. I remember he used joint compound for drywall, and with me being a restaurant builder, I've dealt with drywall and tape and mud and all that stuff. It's actually a really, really good alternative. This part will never be on the car. This is just a mold that I'm making. So all of this eventually is just going to get thrown away. I'll probably save all the rods and everything like that, but the rest of it will all get thrown away. It's kind of a waste of Bondo if I use a ton of Bondo on it just to trash it. So the joint compound works pretty darn good. I'm able to build it up semi-thick. You don't want to go too thick, otherwise it'll start cracking and everything like that. So went over to Lowe's today, picked up a 5-minute fast set joint compound. Mix it up in the bag. I think the bag was $4 for an entire bag. And then a little bit of water. Mix it all together and smear it on. So it might take a couple more layers of this to build up to that process, but it's a million times cheaper, and this stuff sands really, 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 really easy. So I'll build up with this drywall mud. We'll paint it the gloss black to give it the slick coat that it needs to release from the mold. And we'll just keep working this down and get it where it's perfect. Just got done putting on the Parto paste and PVA. So got it on there nice and thick. Should release pretty darn good from the fender flare. Parts that I was waiting on, I got 10 yards of fiberglass, and I also went ahead and got some white gel coat with wax. So I should be able to coat this whole thing. I'm probably going to do 4 layers of fiberglass on this, and then I'll go ahead and sand it down, make sure that it's all nice and smooth, and then I will go ahead and do the gel coat. A couple layers of gel coat, that way I can fine sand that and get it really nice and smooth, get it ready for paint. And then if the fender flare is not thick enough, then I'll go ahead and coat the underside of the actual fender flare. I'm probably also going to do a strip on the underside, a strip or two along the edge where it mates up with the fender. That way it kind of gives it some strength where the bolts go through. That way it's not super thin. I don't want these ripping off as I'm driving down the road. Oh my gosh, so I forgot how much work fiberglass is. So this is 2 layers, and I ran out of time tonight. So we'll go ahead and let these 2 layers go ahead and cure up. And then I'll come in and I'll lightly sand it with 60 grit in the morning. Or actually probably tomorrow when I get off work. And then I'll go ahead and put 2 more layers on. And then this fender should be ready to rock. So it looks extremely smooth. Very good layup, no bubbles, no nothing like that. These white spots that you're seeing here, I'm going to go through with the roller as it kind of dries a little bit. And we'll go ahead and get those air pockets out. I got one more right there that I'll get out. This corner's basically all going to get cut off anyway, smoothed out, so I'm not too worried about that. But we'll go ahead and get some of these air pockets pulled out of it. But other than that, the fender's looking pretty darn good. Of course, I pulled the mold and it didn't record. So this is still just 2 layers of fiberglass. It's actually pretty strong for what it is. I am still going to make 2 more, or put 2 more layers on it just to strengthen the whole thing up. And then 5th layer on the bottom, just on the edge, to build some strength where it's going to bolt through the fender. But I went ahead and trimmed it up. So I pulled the mold, trimmed it up, and none of it recorded. So got it all trimmed up where it needs to be. Everything looks really good. The fender's just sitting on the tire right now, so it looks a little bit funky. But you just saw me cut the actual fender. Went through and I marked out where the fender was going to sit. And then I just went 1 inch down from that flange. Well, probably a half an inch down past that flange. Alright guys, so that's all I got for you for part 2. Ended up getting sick right before I started doing, or before I started the next part to this fender flare section. So just now getting back into the garage. So I understand that, you know, the whole over fender thing isn't for everybody, but this car is definitely function over form. But it is what I feel is kind of a happy medium between the whole section. It kind of gives it the Porsche over fender look in the rear, which is kind of what I was going for. It's kind of not, you know, everybody's thing, but for me, myself personally, I think they turned out fantastic. With as wide as the car is, and the way that the suspension is set up and everything is all track purpose built. It's not necessarily for a look that everybody wants, but this is full function situation. So the front fenders will probably be relatively close to the same. I do have the one front fender done already. I am planning on actually changing that a little bit, as well as the front of the hood. If I don't remember if I put it in this video or the last video, but the hood will be changed here shortly as well. Planning on a couple different things with that. But as soon as the fender flares are done, we'll hop into the door and rear quarter on the passenger side. We'll get those finished up, and then we'll go ahead and strip the car down, get the chassis painted, finished up, get all that stuff situated, and then we'll start putting it all back together. So until the next video, guys, peace out.